I think that's an interesting part also of self-discovery, right? When we're young, we're very much thinking within the me. And a lot of the things that I did, like I taught myself design at 13, for example. I was just like, oh yeah, I like this, right? And I taught myself digital marketing at 17 to be an influencer because I wanted to be a little bit famous, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of it is like centered a little bit from ego. And the hackathon was in a way a good instrument for a mental shift, because as part of the hackathon, I had to think about what to build for other people. And I think walking out of that, I started to think more about what are my unique talents and how can they benefit society. Wow. And I think that's how we find more of our strengths. It reminds me a little bit of like the Japanese like ikigai concept, like what makes me money, what am I like good at, and so on. But I do feel like that is a very good concept, because I felt with what I can build as a product manager, as a startup founder, as a mentor, and so on, it is just tapping into the strengths that I have to build something from an empathetic viewpoint that benefits individuals, companies, society, and so on. Like, it depends a little bit on what I'm working on, right? With video visit, video besuch, it was very much focused on reconnecting families. And then I built other tools that helped make people's workday easier, right? Through like productivity tools, very different focus. But in all of these situations, it's really more about empathizing with other people and understanding what they need and what their problems are, and then using my skill set and my problem solving skills to find the right solution for that. And I think in a sense, you're right to point out that the hackathon was probably the key shifting point that I had in thinking, because the first product that I built, I did very much build it to a degree as a solution to my own problem. But the second product I built was around other people's problems. And ever since, I've been more focused on that.
And how that shift you inside of you?
Sorry?
How does that shifting, having the feeling inside of you?
I think it's just a step towards, like, it was a step towards maturity to a degree, right? The hackathon was one thing, but overall there were just several steps over my journey where I started to adopt more this sort of thinking, where I started to look more inside and try to keep the ego out of the equation. Because I think a lot of things, and based on a lot of people that I talk to, that we want in life, a lot of those are things that we think we have to want, or status symbols and so on. It's not what we might actually want or be content with, right? And at the same time, over a longer period of time, like this is basically what my early 20s were like, there was a lot of self-discovery and identity crisis connected to that self-discovery, in finding out what it is that I truly want and how I can truly contribute. I do think that that's a lifelong journey, because things always change, right? We oftentimes think, or at least that's what I noticed, that it's a cultural thing also, to be fair. Oftentimes success is only considered success when it's in perpetuity. But that's not my perspective, right? I think if someone has a great marriage for 10 years and then they decide that it's maybe not the best thing to continue and they split, to me, that's not a failure. To me, that is a successful marriage for 10 years, right? And I think having this sort of perspective that we can always reinvent ourselves, and it's not a failure to reinvent yourself, right? I shifted from being an entrepreneur, like for now, right? From being a 2-time startup founder to being a product manager. I did not do that because I consider myself to be a failed entrepreneur. I do not consider myself to be a failed entrepreneur at all. Video Visit was quite a big social impact that we had there. But what I realized is that I really like being a product manager. And I really like that more than being an entrepreneur at this stage of my life. Now, might that look different 10 years from now? It might. But neither of these things is what I would consider a failure in and of itself. It's sort of a recalibration, finding a new passion, shifting. And I think being adaptable in life, adaptable and resilient, is the key to building a life that is successful by your own standards.
How could you be curious a little longer like this?
I think you're right. I think a lot of people don't allow themselves to be as curious as they potentially could be. And curiosity is really a superpower. So how can people be more curious? I think it's about observing, and I think it's about caring. So just being quiet and still and seeing what's going on, and also giving yourself permission to ask questions and to really listen to the responses you get. I would challenge people to think about how they've learned, how they've grown, and I bet in doing that, people will see that being curious is what's really helped them do that. And so those would be the ways that I would signify, or at least specify, building curiosity and maintaining curiosity.
Beautiful.
So a normal question, so without being silly, a normal question is, how can I do this more efficiently?
More
And can I tell a little story to make this real?
Please.
So while I'm in this role and I have my own business, I don't work 60 or 80 hours a week. I used to. And now I'm doing my own business. I thought I would be working 60 plus hours a week because that's what culture has told us we need to do. But I wasn't able to because my wife has very fixed hours for her job. So I do the school drop-offs. I do most of the school pickups, most of the laundry. So there's a lot of things that I do, like dance classes and things during the afternoon after school. That's my role. That's part of my responsibility for having the ability to not work for someone else and just work for myself. That was part of the agreement I had with my wife. So I only had a limited amount of time, and I found myself getting very frustrated. Now, in case anyone's wondering where this is going, this is relating to being efficient, and this is the question I asked myself. So I found myself very frustrated. I'm starting my own business. I should be working really hard. I should be doing all these things, but I can't. It's so annoying. It's not fair. And I realized I had a choice. I could just complain about the problem, or I could find the solution. And so what I did was I worked out I have 28 hours a week that I can work. That's all I get without eating into family time or avoiding other responsibilities. So what can I do if I only have 28 hours and I can't get more hours? How can I do more in those hours? How can I be more efficient? And that's been the theme through my life. How can I make this better? How can we make this process more efficient? And what it led to were actually some things I teach and sell. I run a program for other people who want to write books and sort of want to be experts in their space, for how they can go from an idea and create 16 different types of content that they can use for social media, they can give away, they can sell, they can turn into books, they can turn into workshops and programs. And I found a way to reuse everything that I do, which means every half hour of work I do is half an hour that goes towards creating at least 16 different things, which means I've done 8 hours worth of work in half an hour. It's incredibly efficient. So that's the one question, is how can I do this more efficiently?
What is the secret that helped you to expand your ability to think over the years now?
That's really easy to answer that. Reading.
Reading, all right.
reading. It sounds like a very glib, a very instant response, but honestly, that is at the heart of it. I never got a chance to go to university, and probably for the first 10, maybe 15 years of my career, between the age of 18 and 33, it was a drag on my career. But by the time I'd read loads and loads and loads of books like Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, 100 years old, that book, but it's still as true today as it was 100 years ago. Shad Helmstetter, who I talked about earlier, in visualization. Books like that help you understand people and motivation and all of those things. That is single-handedly what's going to moved me to the point whereby I was confident to engage with people. Most people I work with these days have been to university, and they would never guess, unless they looked at my LinkedIn profile, they would never guess that I've never been to university, because I look like, sound like, think like they do.
I think for me, it is about staying curious and continuing to seek out new ideas, new information. And that has been by reading, that has been through podcasts, you know, YouTube. There's so many incredible sources now where, you know, when I first moved to Zambia, I thought, oh, I'm in this tiny little country in the middle of Africa, I have access to nothing. That's not true anymore. I have access to the whole world because of the internet and shows like yours and so on. I think for me, it's curiosity, and it's a curiosity about who I am as well, and wanting to delve deeper and peel off more layers of that onion, and then of course use that information to help others. So to continue to help myself think, it's about being curious, about questioning things and learning more, broadening my own perspective, realizing that you know, if I only know this, I'm in my little box here. The more I know, the more I expose myself, the more the wider my perception can be.
Beautiful.